So thanks to the few people left in the room for sticking around for close to the last talk of the day. I have the distinction of, I think, being the only the speaker at the conference to speak on Yemen. And I think that in part has to do with the fact that we're actually the only company that's active in Yemen at the moment. So if you have questions on Yemen, I'm probably the best person to speak to. Was asked to speak a little bit on what Cantex's experience has been in Yemen, and to illustrate that, I was going to run us through a little bit of what our experience has been at Al Haraka. And Al Haraka is a gold project which is showing significant potential to hopefully one day soon become a mine. And so to start, a quick discussion on why Yemen. Why did we choose Yemen in the first place? Leading on to the discovery of the Al Haraka prospect, delineation of it, and then looking forward to what the next steps are for the project. And closing off once again with the same question that we started with: why are we in Yemen? We actually went to Yemen not looking for gold. The initial interest in Yemen was the fact that part of the Archean Shield extends down into the country, and at the time we were primarily focused around the world on diamonds, and so we did a quick site visit down to Yemen to assess what the potential there was for diamonds. Very shortly after arriving, as in a matter of a day or two, we realized that the geology really wasn't prospective for significant diamond deposits, but the geology looked to be quite similar to that occurs down in Nevada in the US. And as most people in the audience will know, Nevada is a very significant gold producing jurisdiction. And that attracted us to, perhaps the precious and base metal potential within the country. And another, interesting point to Yemen is that it had received very little to almost no modern exploration. So clearly, there was a lot of blue sky potential there. So in 1996, and this picture is, perhaps slightly after 96 because the road's actually tarred, but when we first went in, we were probably one of the few Western companies working in the country. And if you look somewhat closely at the picture, you'll see that hanging off everybody's shoulder is a nice AK-47, which, being Canadian and not having been to Yemen before, was a little bit disgruntling when we first arrived. But if you take a closer look at this picture, you'll see that the gentleman over there is carrying a few loaves of bread. This guy here has his morning cup of tea. They've actually just come back from breakfast. And in Yemen, back in the late 90s, getting up in the morning, putting your shoes on, put your jambia on, throw your AK over the shoulders, exactly the same as those that got up this morning, put on a watch, put on a tie, came to the conference. It's really just a social custom. It's changed. More recently, the government has actually outlawed carrying weapons around, so I unfortunately don't get pictures of guys coming back from breakfast with their AKs in their back anymore. So times have changed in Yemen. So in 96, when we went in, many of the talks this morning have dealt with, the methodology of exploration and what we're aiming to achieve. I've said, well, you need to try and find an area to focus on. We decided to take a regional perspective at northwestern Yemen because it hadn't received any modern exploration. And we took out an area of roughly 52,000 square kilometers. And by means of comparison of how large of an area that is, it's about 2/3 or 3/4 the size of the entire UAE. So it really was a very large area, very rugged, quite remote. Where we could, we'd drive to samples. Where we couldn't drive, we'd hike. Where it was too far to hike, we'd take a donkey, and at the end of the day, we actually ended up with a military helicopter that would allow us to get into some of the more remote regions that we otherwise couldn't access. From that initial reconnaissance program, we collected about 5,000 heavy mineral stream samples, which were subjected to a somewhat proprietary heavy mineral concentrating technique, which is actually at our own laboratory in Canada. And so each one of these individual points in the map is actually a sample location. And plotted on the map there are actually some of our gold results. And you'll see some obvious clustering of gold anomalies through the survey. And Obviously, once we got those reconnaissance samples back and the results back, we went back out to the field to try and see if we can find where the source of those anomalies were. You know, and often this would be the sort of terrain that we'd be working in. It's quite rugged, quite mountainous, which makes it difficult to move around, but it does provide very good exposure to the geology. In many cases, working upstream from where the anomalies were collected from the wadis, we would be able to find outcropping mineralization. And this photo is actually a part of the Alherica mineralized zone. The mineralization itself actually runs a long strike along this mountain range for a couple of kilometers further that way and about another 800 meters in front of the screen as well. So very scenic, a beautiful place to work. We discovered several other zones of mineralization within the country as well. A couple other gold projects at Al Fayed up north, Jebel Sabain in the east. Some significant base metal anomalies and discoveries as well. The Suar and Wadi Kitaba projects, which were most recently actually optioned off to Valley, which is one of the world's larger mining companies, and not many people realize it, but they spent several years with us in Yemen exploring as well. And so focusing in on Alherica, once we'd gotten into the field, done some prospecting, a little bit of mapping, we realized that Alherica had the potential to be something significant. And the next step in its exploration cycle was to try and define exactly how large it could be. So we collected a whole series of soil sampling. And to give you a sense of scale, it's a 1 kilometer scale bar there. Our soil sampling indicated that we were looking at probably a 3 to 4 kilometer strike length. And if you look at the higher grade results, which is shown in the purple, you can kind of make out two parallel zones of higher grade mineralization. And what doesn't show up too well on screen, I suspect, are these small little kind of orangey diamonds. And those are actually locations where at surface, when we're out prospecting or out collecting samples from the soil, we're actually seeing visible gold in the rocks. So there certainly are some high grade portions to the deposit. Obviously, once we discovered that, hey, this has the size potential, we're seeing a fair bit of mineralization at surface, we went on to several drill campaigns. This is actually our most recent drill campaign of roughly 70 holes, and that builds upon another 90 holes that were drilled previously. So we've, to date, we're actually still drilling. We've got 2 drills on site, but over 160 holes done at the current time. The red dots, are drill holes where we've intercepted grades greater than a gram per ton. Most of our drilling to date has focused on the one end of the deposit, simply because we needed to start someplace. And as time moves on, and we'll get to the next steps, we'll certainly be looking to try and increase our density there, and then gradually step out the drilling further to the other end of the deposit. The mineralization that has been intercepted is fairly reasonable grade. Certainly we're getting decent drill intercept lengths, several tens of meters. Sometimes upwards of 50 meters, and some of the grades are plus 2 gram, plus 3 gram. On occasion, obviously, we do get some higher grade intercepts, such as the 24 meters of 7 grams there. And importantly, the mineralization itself is at or near surface. You can see this is a cross section through the deposit, so perpendicular to the strike that we saw earlier. And you can kind of make out the 2 higher grade zones that run along that strike length. And we do get significant widths of mineralization. They're kind of 50 to 100 meters wide each along that 3 or 4 kilometer strike length. And significantly as well, many of our deeper holes have terminated in mineralization. We haven't drilled it out to depth. There is blue sky as we go deeper. And so looking at the next steps, since last year, when I was last year, we have been able to join with a company by the name of WCP Resources, who have now optioned the Alherica project. And from Cantex's perspective, we consider them to be the ideal partner. And the reason for that is, not only do they have the financial capability of moving the project forward, but more importantly, they have the technical ability and experience to move a project from the exploration stage through to the development and into the mining stage. And WCP is a part of the Apollo group of companies, which includes other companies such as Coalspur, Papillon, Mantra, Equatorial, to name a few. They're Australian-based, an ASX-listed company that holds the project at the moment. And really looking forward with WCP, what their aim is, and that meets with what our aim is as well, but they'll earn a 70% interest in the project, and that is through in part by spending the next $30 million of work on the project. So we're obviously very excited to have them aboard and looking forward to the next steps. So with Alherica being the most significant precious metal discovery in Yemen, we feel quite strongly that there's a multi-million ounce potential there. Exactly how many millions of ounces has yet to be determined, but certainly it has the scale to justify the investment in the country. And that's obviously a key component to why we're there still, why WCP has joined us, and why we're willing to continue to work in a jurisdiction that many other companies aren't willing to. Clearly, to move the project through into defining a resource, we have a substantial amount of drilling to be done with a strike length of several kilometers and fairly significant width. It's a lot of holes to bring that up to a 43-101 or a JORC compliant resource. And importantly, as some of the past speakers have mentioned as well, it's wonderful to have a lot of metal on the ground. It does you very little good if you can't extract it at the end of the day. And importantly, the initial metallurgical work that's been done on the project is extremely positive. And so bringing it back to where we started from, why Yemen? Why is Cantex and now with our partners WCP, why are we still in Yemen? Certainly, it's been a difficult couple of years. Yemen hasn't perhaps been the most stable of investment jurisdictions throughout the world. But when you're in on the ground, the situation certainly is improving at the moment dramatically, and that builds upon the effort from the government to establish a meaningful mining industry within the country. There's numerous multinational companies that are working there, but dominantly in the oil industry. Hunt Oil got its start there. Total and Chevron have significant operations. But Yemen itself has reached peak oil. Their oil revenues are declining as their resources are declining, and the government and the country are realizing that they need to look at other commodities. And so they're making a real focus on stimulating the mining industry. With the assistance of the IFC, they've rewritten their mining code. It's now a mining code that's competitive on an international basis. And significantly in 2008, the corporate tax rate was reduced. Once again, that's down to 20%, so it's pretty competitive on a global basis. And then bringing it all together, once again, we still feel that Yemen is underexplored. Clearly we've done a fair bit of work up in the northwest, but there's more to be done. The work that we have done has demonstrated that the country has significant potential, not just with the projects that we've discovered, but I believe that there's other mineralization that has yet to be uncovered. The government is very supportive. They realize that they need to stimulate the mining industry and are working hard to do so. And security within the country is improving. When President Saleh was being overthrown through most of 2011, the security situation in the countryside, took a real hit. The government was concerned about maintaining security in the capital, and really that's where their concern ended. They didn't have too much concern about the rural areas. Their time, money, energy, and military were focused on maintaining control of Sanaa. And that left us, obviously we're not exploring in Sanaa. It left our project in a much trickier situation than it had been, since '96 when we first moved in. And when the president was left, early this year, it wasn't an immediate change back to the government being involved in the local areas. It took quite some time, obviously, for the government to, appoint the ministers, who then appointed the governors, and then appointed the deputy governors, and then the municipal officials, and the police got back involved and such. It took a long time, and is still occurring, for all those changes to occur, such that the government is starting to regain control of large areas of the country. And for us in particular, it's important that they're regaining control within our area. We've been active in the field, really throughout. But it was difficult for a good year and a half there. It is improving now, and we're hopeful that that improvement continues to occur, and certainly are expecting it to. And then, of course, really what keeps us in Yemen is the fact that we've got mineralization that justifies it. If we didn't have significant mineralization there, we would have left. But that's really, in a nutshell, Yemen, where we've been, where we're going, and hopefully the country will continue to stabilize and we'll continue to get the support that we need in order to move forward. And I haven't heard a single question, I think, since the few talks that I've been in, so if anybody has a question,